Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to this webinar about our Southern Italy program covering the incredible regions of Amalfi as well as Puglia. This program is our reverse itinerary happening in October of next year. It begins in Puglia in the wonderful Baroque city of Lecce and ends up in Vico Equense, part of the Sorrentine Coast. If you're new to Wheel and Anchor, I'd like to say a few words about what our community is all about. If you look at the pictures of all the folks that are surrounding me here, you can see a lot of smiling faces. And these are your fellow members, travelers who we have successfully brought together over the last several years since the inception of Wheel and Anchor. And our mantra is all about just that. It's about finding like-minded people who enjoy travel that is a little bit different than most of what you find in the market, smaller groups, people who are really interested in taking it easy at a slower pace, exploring places that are a little bit more off the beaten track, and generally having great times. And inside of that, my personal goal for all of our members at Wheel and Anchor is to become well traveled and well connected. And what that means for me, and what I hope that means for you, is rather than just looking at the world as a number of places like a checklist that you have to check off, but rather having the experience of really being somewhere. And when I say being, it's about again, having the time, as I just said, to go at a slower pace, to absorb the culture, the vibe, the traditions that are in that place. And that, for me, is I think what defines being someone who is well traveled. And consequently, you also end up being connected not only to your fellow travelers, your fellow Wheel and Anchor members, but also to those that you meet along the way. And I know that some incredible friendships, connections have been made in all of the visits that we've done to the various destinations that we offer here at Wheel and Anchor. Allow me to briefly indulge in the About Us part of the webinar so you get a sense of who we are. We are a dedicated team of professionals. Myself, the curator, the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I'm the person that puts all the programs together, at least the ideation of it. And I've been working in travel for well over 30 years, organizing trips for Canadians to just about all parts of the globe. And this wonderful team of people around me are the ones that support in ensuring that we have fantastic experience, and as well that the experience of our members as you go through the process of learning about inquiring, booking, and actually traveling with our groups is top notch. The person on the screen immediately to my right is Paula Zarnik. She is our lead trip specialist and the one who will likely take your call if you call into our office or email to find out more and to hopefully join up for this and our other trips. Today's agenda is as usual with all of our webinars like this. We're going to be taking you, someone who's interested in visiting Southern Italy, on a little digital journey that will help you understand the highlights and what makes this trip particularly special. As I mentioned right at the outset, this trip will begin in the city of Lecce, incredible Baroque city down in the heel of Italy's boot, if you can refer to it that way. And we're going to spend a few days there before heading up into the heart of Puglia, the area around Alberobello and specifically Loco Rotondo, where we're going to be staying in a wonderful masseria. And from there, we cross over basically all the way across southern Italy to Vico Equense, which is on the Sorrentine Coast, just outside of Sorrento, a wonderful little town that is a lot less touristy than neighboring Sorrento, although we'll certainly spend adequate time there. And it's from here that we will explore the rest of the region before culminating our trip in Naples. So let's now run through everything that you can expect on this incredible trip through southern Italy. The starting point for this trip and the destination that you'll fly to is actually the airport of Brindisi. This is a town on the Adriatic coast of Italy, about a 45-minute drive away from Lecce. And the best way to get to Brindisi is probably flying via Zurich. There are connections from Toronto, Vancouver, other cities in Canada, perhaps via either Toronto or Vancouver, flying through Zurich. And then from there, you can catch a connecting flight into Brindisi, and you'll be picked up by our local transfer partner and brought to this wonderful Baroque city of Lecce, where as usual, on our day of arrival, we keep it pretty chill. You've got time to walk around and explore all of the beautiful buildings and to enjoy a first evening at leisure before we get into the meat and potatoes of our program. And it's here in Lecce, of course, that you will first meet our Puglian guide, Michele. It's a wonderful chap who comes from near the town of Ostuni, one of our stops on the trip. And I first met Michele in Alberobello, which is yet another stop on the trip. And he has now guided a couple of our wheel and anchor groups and is very well loved by all of our members. He is a wealth of information. And more importantly, he seems to know almost everybody in all of the towns that we stop in. And on our first day in Lecce, of course, we're going to be taking in the city itself as we meander around on a walking tour of this incredible spot. As I said, Lecce is all about the Baroque buildings. And starting from Piazza del Duomo, the cathedral square, almost every town in Italy has a Piazza del Duomo. You'll gaze up and you'll immediately get this incredible sense of one of the cities that is really one of the top five in all of Europe when it comes to Baroque architecture. During the day, we'll sort of meander around. There's a whole bunch of sites that we'll take in, and we'll have our first taste of Puglian cuisine at lunch, maybe trying one of the specialties, the melanzane di polpette, one of my favorites, aubergine eggplant, done the Italian way. So good. But there's time in the afternoon to sort of saunter around on your own. There's lots of great little spots for shopping. But for me, the most interesting and exciting thing about Lecce is to go out in the evening at dusk. These yellowish lights come on the lamps on all the different buildings, and the ambiance is truly amazing. Just sauntering around in the evening, maybe stopping for a glass of wine somewhere, and this is really what Lecce is all about. On this next day, we head out from Lecce, heading out to the Adriatic coast, and our destination is going to be Otranto, which is a smaller city that has a real diversity between its culture, its art, but it's also a popular seaside resort. As you can see from this image, the seaside around Otranto features this incredibly beautiful water and these fascinating rock formations, but it's actually the town itself that is the focus of our visit here. There is a wonderful cathedral with this amazing mosaic tile floor, one of the most intact that I have ever seen from that era. After having a little walk around the historic center, the real highlight of our day is going to be on going on a local truffle hunt. And so we're going to join a family and learn about the method of going after these very expensive prizes, and um, um, we'll get to enjoy a wonderful meal afterwards that's going to incorporate some of these delicious truffles that we find throughout the day. On our fourth day, we'll head out from Lecce and make our way north to central part of Puglia, heading to the town of Locorotondo. The town itself sits on a hilltop and features these beautiful white buildings that you can see from a long distance away. This is the traditional sort of townscape that you'll find throughout Puglia. We're actually going to be staying about a kilometer away in a beautiful spot called the Masseria Aprile. A masseria is a family owned farm, an estate that's often been in the family, as in the case of Masseria Aprile, for many, many generations. These are very common. This is the original form of agriculture, land ownership dating back quite some centuries. The family that owns the Masseria Aprile have actually owned this property for 13 generations, making it full of history and a lot of this wonderful family charm. As you can see from the photo, some of the rooms are actually in the traditional trulli, these conical roofed houses that we're going to see all throughout this part of Puglia. And our host will be Stefania and her family. There are three generations of her family that still live on the property. And I have it on account from our last members who visited Stefania at the Masseria Aprile that this was truly one of the best and most special moments of the whole trip. Staying with her and her family in this wonderful spot, a short drive away from Loco Rotondo. We'll have our first day trip in this region, visiting the little town and the most famous town in this area called Alberobello. And it's here that we will see the biggest concentration of these trulli houses. You'll find them as we drive around the countryside, all scattered around, but in the town of Alberobello itself, and you'll immediately see that by the number of other visitors that are coming specifically for the trulli houses. And we'll hear from Michele all about the history, why they designed them this way. These conical style dry stone roofs, sitting atop a white stucco building. Some of them were used for storage. Obviously, today a lot of them are still used for residential purposes, and of course for hotels as well. So we'll have a good chance to visit the town, hear all about this, and then following that, we'll head off to a local dairy farm, a family-owned dairy farm, friends of Michele. I visited this spot myself, and we'll get a chance to understand how the famous and delicious cheese products and other various delicacies are produced specifically for the local market. So it's a very, very interesting and engaging day. We're going to head back to the seaside once again, this time to visit two incredible villages, Monopoli and Polignano e Mare. Of the two, Monopoli is the larger town. It's actually a port city with some medieval heritage and beautiful narrow streets, squares, lots of historic churches. When I was there was a festival going on. So a lot of the sort of goings on, traveling fairs and so on will take place in Monopoli. Not far away, Polignano e Mare is best known for these dramatic cliffs that you see here. Beautiful beaches, all in these coves underneath the town itself. And overall, probably the most picturesque part in all of seaside Puglia. Today we'll head out for another great full day excursion, this time taking in the towns of Ostuni and Celia Messapica. On our way up to Ostuni, we're actually going to make a stop at yet another masseria, this time the Masseria Brancati. And this particular one has roots back to the Roman era. Its focus is on olive oil, and it's here we'll have the chance to learn about the production of olives, in particular EVO, or extra virgin olive oil. You'll probably get a little bit of education as to why it is considered the elixir of a long life. In Ostuni, we're going to see this white city. In fact, it seems like the whole town was painted white, and sitting up on top of a hill, you can see it from miles around. In fact, it's a favorite retirement town for people coming from all other parts of Northern Europe and the UK. And finally, Celia Messapica. In fact, this is the hometown of our guide, Michele, and it is considered the culinary capital of Puglia. But by this time in the itinerary, you'll probably think that every place is a culinary capital because the food here is truly extraordinary. We'll visit the medieval castle and then have a delicious lunch with some of the finest specialties from Puglia before we return back to Loco Rotondo. This morning, we're going to have to check out and say goodbye to Stefania and her family at the Masseria Aprile as we make our way towards Sorrento and the Amalfi Coast region. Matera is unique for its ancient cave dwellings, which are known as the Safsasi, and they're carved into limestone cliffs and comprise homes, churches, and other structures which date all the way back to the Paleolithic era. It makes Matera one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. The winding alleys, stone buildings, and so on make it into the UNESCO World Heritage Site that it is. It's also become famous as a film location because it has this sort of timeless atmosphere that blends history with culture, as well as all this very impressive cultural heritage. We'll spend a couple hours there stopping for lunch before we continue our way on to Sorrento and Vico Equense. Although it's another 3 hours drive from here, it's anything but boring. The scenery, it has these massive rolling hills. I was quite taken aback when I did this drive, and the time will pass by, and we'll then arrive at our hotel perched on a cliff overlooking the Bay of Naples and Mount Vesuvius. You might ask yourself why we are staying here in Vico Equense versus the much more well known town of Sorrento, a little further down the coast. And what I like about Vico Equense is the fact that it is much less touristy than Sorrento. Don't get me wrong, Sorrento is a terrific town and we will visit it and spend some time during our stay here. But when you wander around the streets of Vico Equense, you really feel like you're in Italy because the predominant language you'll hear being spoken is Italian, which of course is not the case so much anymore in Sorrento, where you'll hear mostly English and various other foreign languages. The location of Vico Equense as well, a little bit closer to Naples and Pompeii, means that you save quite a bit of time. There's one main road that leads from Naples into Sorrento, and the stretch that is just past Vico Equense on its way to Sorrento is routinely jam-packed with traffic. And so we save almost an hour of time for when we visit Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius than if we were to stay in Sorrento itself. So overall, I think this is a terrific spot, and based on what our members have said from our past trips, they absolutely loved staying here in Vico Equense. And our first full day tour from here will be to the famous Amalfi Coast itself, specifically the villages of Positano and the town of Amalfi. We're going to make this trip by private boat because, from past experience, again, the traffic leading from the Sorrentine Coast across the peninsula to Amalfi tends to be absolutely mayhem. And we don't want to miss a minute of time taking in this incredible coastline. We're going to get picked up directly below the hotel in the village of Seiano, and our private boat captain will take us down the Sorrentine coast, around the peninsula, around the point, where we'll have magnificent views looking over to Capri, before we then make stops in Positano, in Amalfi, perhaps another stop depending on time, and you'll be able to see for yourself what all the hustle bustle is about in these world famous towns of Amalfi. On this day, we'll stick a little bit closer to home and have a bit of a culinary exploration as we make our way over to a small private dairy farm. The Gargiulo family have been making cheese and other dairy products for almost 100 years and are known as one of the finest producers in the region. In fact, we'll get a demonstration on how they convert cow's milk into mozzarella cheese, among others, and what makes it particularly special, and why the Italians specifically like to get their cheese as fresh as they do. Anyway, I won't divulge any more about that because I think it's part of the fun to explore and find out about all of this. They're also going to show us how to make Napoli-style pizza, which we'll enjoy for lunch before continuing into Sorrento itself, the farm being sort of halfway between Vico Equense and Sorrento, and there'll be lots of time to explore this famous touristic city with all its alleys and souvenir shops and some further great vistas over the Bay of Naples. The beauty here is that while you can head back to Vico Equense in the hotel with the group in the coach, some may want to stick around for a while, perhaps spend the evening, because you can take the local train service from Sorrento back to Seiano, the railway stop. The train journey is only about 15 minutes in duration, and then it's a 10-minute walk downhill from the station back to your hotel. So all in all, you can make a terrific day of visiting Sorrento and having enjoyed this amazing cheese. We're going to set out on one more private boat trip, and this time out into the sea towards the famous island of Capri. Once again, we get picked up at the little port of Seiano just beneath our hotel, and we make our way across to this amazing island, sometimes known as the Blue Island or the Love Island or the Sleeping Beauty Island, whatever you want to call it. It is certainly been a home to the jet set crowd and the rich and famous. And when you get there, you'll see why. Our local guide will point us in the right direction of some of the places that we can visit, walking along the high street with all of its international brand name shops. But we'll also head up to Anacapri, which is the little village on top of the mountain. Up here, things, once you get off the beaten track, are a little bit quieter. You might want to take a chairlift ride up to the summit, or sit in one of the lovely cafes looking out over the blue Mediterranean back towards Naples and the Sorrentine Coast. We'll rejoin our boat in the afternoon, where we'll have a tour around some other parts of the island, visiting some caves. If there's time and if it's not too crowded, we might even go into the Blue Grotto. This is often on itinerary of many tour companies, but the amount of time one has to wait in line to actually get inside isn't often worth it. So we make that call on a case-by-case basis to see if it's actually worth the time, which can sometimes be hours and hours. Irrespective of that, once we've finished our beautiful day in Capri, we'll head back and have the rest of the evening at leisure to enjoy dinner, another fine dinner either in town or at our hotel. Today we'll visit yet another of my very favorite spots to visit. We're going to head by coach over to Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii. On arrival, we'll make a walk uphill from the entrance point. It's about 20 or 30-minute walk to get to the crater rim of Vesuvius. And what's fascinating is that from below, it just looks more or less like an ordinary mountain. But when you get up to the crater and are able to peer down inside and still see the plumes of smoke coming up from some of the fumaroles, you'll understand that this is actually still considered to be an active volcano. It hasn't had any major eruptions recently, thank goodness, and much to the gratitude of the residents in nearby Naples, not to mention Pompeii and Herculaneum, which of course were buried during the last major eruption way back in 79 AD. After our visit on Vesuvius, we'll stop for a delicious lunch on the side of the volcano, where we'll have a little bit of a wine tasting lunch before we head down to Pompeii itself. And Pompeii, of course, was completely buried and pretty much all of the residents eradicated when the volcano went off. But the buildings are, of course, intact. And on our tour around with our guide, Ornella, she'll explain to us some of the stories of the families that they've been able to track, even despite almost 2,000 years of history. So it's a remarkable day and a fantastic historic visit to Pompeii as well as Vesuvius itself. We then have to say goodbye to our hotel and to Vico Equense, and we'll check out and make our way back to Naples. Now, Naples is a very special city. I would call it almost gritty and somewhat ominous with its sort of dark, narrow streets. That being said, it is a remarkable spot in and of itself, one of southern Italy's most celebrated cities. And so we'll have time here to explore around from our centrally located hotel before heading out for our last dinner, a farewell dinner, before we say goodbye to our adventure through southern Italy. From our hotel, you'll get a private transfer either to Naples Airport if you're returning home, or to the nearby railway station if you're continuing your journey to elsewhere in Italy. Before I conclude this webinar today about southern Italy, I'm just going to give you some details about the pricing and inclusions of this trip. Of course, all of these can be found in detail in our trip itinerary. If you haven't already received it, you can download it from our website. You'll find here the pricing for this program, of course, in Canadian dollars at $89.90 double and $11,990 single occupancy, and that is for our trip at the end of October 2025. As with all of our trips at Wheel and Anchor, there are a whole bunch of inclusions, which are, of course, all of the transportation, including your private transfer on arrival and departure, as well as to all of the places that I've mentioned in this webinar. We've got some terrific hotels, the Masseria, of course, in Puglia, as well as the five-star Grand Hotel Angioleri in Vico Equense, and some terrific local guides, Michele, who will be our guide in Puglia, and Ornella, who is our local guide in Vico Equense and the whole area of the Sorrentine Coast. The only things that you have to look after are your international airfare to and from Italy, as well as travel, medical, and cancellation insurance, which, of course, we highly, highly recommend. Hopefully, all of the information that I provided in this webinar today will answer all of your questions. Please do take a look at our detailed trip itinerary, as well as the supplementary information that is provided that addresses pretty much all of the frequently asked questions that we get. But of course, if you have any other question or specific inquiry, if you'd like to book, then please do contact us either by sending an email to Paula, who is our lead trip specialist, or giving her a call, and we will be more than happy to get back to you so that you can facilitate joining us on this wonderful trip. Thank you for joining me on this webinar today, and I hope you found it interesting and engaging, and it will inspire you to make a visit to this wonderful region. Please do have a look at our YouTube channel. You can find webinars like this on all of our other programs that are currently available. And of course, if you subscribe, then you'll be notified each time we add a new webinar. Thanks again, and have yourself a great day.